Now, I want to come back to our region now and show you some media that was across the ditch in New Zealand today. They've had another go at our good friend, the economics editor at the Australian newspaper, Adam Creighton. He's off to Washington to be the Washington correspondent soon. But the news up here, Adam Creighton blasts New Zealand's mass psychogenic illness after third lockdown. And, of course, the New Zealand media hit back and attacked Adam Creighton. He joins us now from Surrey Hills in Sydney. Adam, this is a column you wrote for The Australian where you attacked Australia and New Zealand's approach. But every time you have a crack at New Zealand, they like to hit back and they reckon you're having a swipe at them.
Yeah, certainly that's true. This is the second or third time, actually, that I've copped some criticism. I don't think the government over there is used to much criticism, and so I think to the extent that it gets it, it's actually in the Australian newspaper over here. But look, I think the points I made were valid, and I think some of the comments on that article agreed with me. So
yeah,
I'm
essentially your point. Yeah, your point goes back to what we started the show on, and that was lockdowns. And you're talking about the lockdown fetishists in Australia, especially in Victoria. And, of course, New Zealand has been front of that queue as well. Another lockdown in Auckland, of course, just in the last few days. Give us your theory in a nutshell.
Well, look, it was the third lockdown, I think, in Auckland as well, which of course, is very expensive to those businesses over there. And somewhat amusingly in New Zealand, everyone has a mandated app from the government that actually blares when there's a crisis. And of course, it was designed for earthquakes and things like that, but it's been used for COVID. And news reports in New Zealand were that people were fleeing restaurants on Sunday night when the lockdown was announced. And of course, it was Valentine's Day, so somewhat amusing. But look, more seriously, I think both Australia and New Zealand, the leadership of both countries, have to level with their populations, about when they're going to open up to the rest of the world, because it's increasingly clear that these vaccines are very welcome, but they're not going to eradicate the virus completely. So that means in the future there will be more cases, certainly more than 3 and 4. Of COVID-19, in Sydney, Melbourne and Auckland. And so, I mean, is it seriously going to stay the way, for another 12 months, another 24 months, that people can't leave their countries or travel overseas?
You and I have been on a similar page on this stuff over the year, and you've constantly come up with interesting research and facts and figures from overseas to back up your arguments. And your latest column looked at this sort of mass psychosis, really, almost a madness that's enveloping us. And it gets to the stage, as I highlighted on this show from all week and again in this program, you've got Daniel Andrews saying that the virus is getting smarter. I mean, this is just insane.
And moves the speed of light, I think he also said it.
Well, exactly. Surely facts need a run here, not a motive fear-mongering like that.
Yeah, look, that's a fantastic example, actually. I mean, most politicians are quite happy to go out there and say that the so-called UK strain is, 40 or 50% more contagious, which of course sounds very scary. But if you look at that fact in a more dispassionate way, all it means that, one person who's infected in a room of 100 people, the old strain would mean that roughly on average 10 people would get infected, but with the new strain it's 14 people. So when you put it that way, it's nowhere near as scary. But of course the politicians deliberately try to put these facts in the most scary way imaginable to instill compliance in the population. And I think that kind of largely explains it. Is a mass psychosis, if you like. I mean, I'm surprised people even suggest that our reaction is not over the top, because our society is structured in such a way, through social media, through traditional media, through the incentives of governments, and of course through our own biological biases to be scared and to overreact, that you will get a huge overreaction. And so, of course, that is what we've got. And what I would say, it's the role of journalists like me who have some freedom to, to speak, to push back against the overreaction. But sadly, we've seen very little of that actually over the past 12 months.
Well, how can people not become frightened? How can children not become scared when they're told to stay home from school in country schools 400 kilometres away from any COVID infection?
Yeah, well, certainly in that paper that you just mentioned, in March last year, there was a leaked document from the German government where the actual official recommendation from senior bureaucrats to the German government was to scare children and to scare people as much as possible to ensure compliance with COVID restrictions. Now, I mean, to me, that is kind of morally, philosophically wrong. And but look, it depends what sort of society you want to live in. If you're an authoritarian, if you think government knows best, then maybe that is the right strategy.
It's the same strategy they use in the climate debate, but that's a discussion for another day. Thanks for joining us, Adam.
Thanks, Chris.
Adam Creighton from The Australian, always writing and talking good sense backed by facts.